Ms. Garula. Here. Ms. Bayless here, Mr. Becker.
Here.
Ms. Hale.
Here.
Mr. Houtman. Mr. Candela.
Here.
Ms. Sullivan.
Okay, we now open the committee of the whole meeting to public comments on agenda items. Do we have any public comments? No. Okay, well, welcome to all of you. We will move on to presentations.
All right. Yes, welcome family and friends and some of our teachers who decided to continue and join us. We have 30 students in our entire district that have made the most growth. And what we mean by growth is we take a bunch of assessments, as you know, because you get all the information, and I'm sure your students come home and tell you, we're taking a test on this, or we're doing an assessment on this. But we do assessments in the fall, right when students come back from summer. And then we test them several times a year, and then in the spring for a final assessment. So the students that you see here and that we're recognizing and celebrating tonight are the ones who made the most growth from fall all the way to spring. I'm going to ask the principals to come up and help me recognize and announce them, and they will share their name and what assessment they are being recognized for. And then students, when you hear your name, you're going to come up and get your certificate. Then we're going to take a picture at the end of everybody, and then there'll be an opportunity for families if you'd like to take a picture with your child and their principal. And if their teachers here, we're happy to do that too. So thank you again for coming during your summer vacations, but we're really excited about celebrating. They're all in order. So if you want to just give it to me here. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay. So for Diamond Lake School, we would like to recognize the following students for reading. Alexandra. Yep, she's back there. I see her cute little sister. Come on, Alexandra. Good job. Dominic. And Hayes. Hayes? I couldn't see if he was back there. Okay. All right. Next category is also for reading and English language arts. Allie.
We'll do a group picture at the end, so we'll.
Okay, get ready. Dominic wins again. And Levi. Okay, next one is for Kim. Yeah, that's okay. Kimberly Gonzalez. I believe she's here. Yes, right there. Emma Estrada. Ezekiel Gonzalez. Oh, I love the chain. Miguel Huerta. Look at it. Good job, dude. And Daniela Sanchez. And then this was also for Spanish reading, Luna. Kimberly Benuelos, is she back there? No, okay. And Juan Pablo. Good job.
Finally, students, would you guys come on over here? We'll take one giant picture with Dr. Berger and myself. Yay, well, let's do. You might want to go. Yay.
Damn, you got two, baby. 11.
Can you get us all?
Oh, hold on. Ezekiel, come on up, dude, quick.
Say sparkle.
All right, we have Mr. Freiberger who will be announcing the West Oak Intermediate School students.
So awesome.
All right, here we go. And then just announce what they.
All right. Let me find my list here. Okay. So, first for third grade, Layla Samano. Layla, come on up. And in fourth grade ELA, Deliani Fernandez. Deliani. Let's see her. Woo, woo, woo. Congrats. Yay, Deliani. Congratulations. And for fifth grade reading, Mr. Jose Gonzalez. Come on up, Jose. Yeah, there he is. Always very stylish. Congrats, Jose. Congrats, dude. Okay, moving on to math. In third grade, we have Miss Caitlin Shifley. Come on up. Awesome job, Caitlin. And in fourth grade math, we have Maya Torres. Maya Torres, come on up. Congrats. And in fifth grade math, Nicholas Miller. Come on up, Nicholas. Congratulations. Big time. Moving on to SLA. So in third grade, we have, oh my goodness, another repeat. So, oh no, I'm sorry. We have Samantha Sotero. Samantha, come on up. Samantha here? Not a repeat? Okay. Moving on. In fourth grade, Flor Vargas. Flor Vargas. There she is. Congratulations. Like 300 points. That's awesome. And in fifth grade, Dylan Linos. I didn't see him. There's so many people here.
We have all of our West Oak Intermediate students come on out for a group picture with Mr. Freiberger.
Dylan did make his presence known when he pied me in the face very hard.
You got it, girl.
All right, from West Oak Middle School, we have Mr. Peterson, who will do the honors.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least here. I know there's a lot of people here. I don't want to miss her if she is here, but our sixth grade math student that had the most growth was Kaylee Torres. Is she here? Just want to make sure. Okay, I know that was the only one I did not see. At the seventh grade level, I'd like to announce here, for the most growth with seventh grade is Daniel Lazaroff. At the eighth grade level, I know she's moving on to bigger and better things at Mundelein High School, but Kayla, they call her Sammy Uribe. All right, nice job, Sammy. Okay, we move on to reading now. Reading, our sixth grader that showed the most growth is a Mr. Mario Morales. Ready? All right, moving on here. Seventh grade reading student that showed the most growth was Miguel Esquivel Gomez. Miguel. Okay, and our last one, our eighth grader, that is, like I said, moving on to Mundelein High School, not to be outdone by her sister sitting next to her, but it's Joanna Juarez Mendoza. All right. Congrats, Joanna.
All right, we have the West Oak Middle School students. Come on up.
Come on, Miss Alves, you can get it on this.
Now this is
We got some heights then.
Yeah. I was
I'm
gonna
gonna
say,
go
well,
on this side.
All right, and that concludes our wonderful celebration of these amazing students. Thank you so much, families and friends, for coming and helping us recognize and celebrate them. You should be so proud of all the growth and the success and achievement they've made. So thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful summer. You are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you'd like to leave, you are welcome to do so. We will not be offended. Thank you. Yes. Going to turn the floor over to Dr. Cunningham and the principals who are going to review our assessment data. It was a spoiler alert. That was supposed to be at the end, like we were supposed to present the data and then you were supposed to see the amazing students who made all the growth, but doing things the backwards due to time, but I know it's going to be just as engaging and informative. So
No,
we should have asked.
you better down the grandma bag.
Stay.
But
Oh, thank you. So we're going to keep it much briefer than usual. I think we've kind of reflected, and so we'll kind of give some summaries as we go through the slides. But the reality is we want to get some of the action steps. And then also I know there's a couple questions that the board had sent me earlier today. So I'm going to try to incorporate some of those questions in, hopefully to answer some of those and to dialogue about some of this more. So I'm not going to necessarily go over this again. We kind of touched on these goals. We're focusing on the ELA and math and Spanish as well. Just a reminder that our tiers are set in this manner: 30th and above tier 1, tier 2, 29th to 12th, and then tier 3, 11th. Our MTSS team did meet this spring to look at all of our percentages. We'll do that every year. That's a new practice to say, do we need to adjust these? Really, there was no need to adjust them this year, but that's something that we do incorporate as to what we are doing with that group. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica. I'll keep the clicker if that makes sense, everybody. And
Great.
okay, and we'll go through. Great.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. So just to quickly review, we take a look at this each time just to remind ourselves what's included on the ELA's assessment at the early childhood level. We start with early literacy, which gives us those foundational skills. And then our goal is by the time our children leave here to go to West Oak, that they have moved on to the STAR reading assessment, which has much more developmental skills and application, where we're looking at the higher level of author, literary, argument, vocabulary, and comprehension. So when we take a look at our kindergarten scores for this year, it's very typical for us to see the 100% growth in ELA for the fact that many of our students are just being taught this information for the very first time. We do not give the ELA assessment in kindergarten, just the early literacy, as this provides us with the foundation for our students. We also saw the same 100% growth with all of our students in math. And a lot of this not only had to do with the fact that our children were just learning it for the first time, but also with the adoption of our new math curriculum, the Envisions program. We found that the Envision program is much more rigorous, much more challenging in several different ways. And when our students were taking the multiple choice assessments that are much more skill and drill, they were finding that, yeah, we do know these skills and we do know these facts and we do know how to solve these problems, because this is the rather simpler part in comparison to what we've been doing on a day-to-day in the classroom. And then for the first time, we had kindergarten take the Spanish language arts assessment. We started it in the winter this year and did it in comparison to the spring. We did not start it in the fall because one of the things we thought about was that for many of our children, it was their first exposure to the Spanish language within the dual language program. However, after reflecting and talking about it, next year, we are going to go ahead and start with it in the fall, because when we think about our student population, we are giving the ELA assessments to every single student, regardless of their primary language. So there's many kindergarten students who had never done anything with English, and we were still assessing them. So we want to be able to make this more fair and measurable. So we will start doing the Spanish language arts in the fall next year. And again, we were proud to see 100% growth across kindergarten in all academic subjects. And then when we take a look at ELA for first and second grade, this was looking at not only how many students showed us growth within their particular test, whether they took the early literacy or the reading, but also looking at how many of our students were able to exit out of that early lit by meeting the raw score and meeting the raw score within early literacy to move then into the reading assessment. So we have many students that you can see here in first grade who have already moved into that reading assessment. So they are ahead in terms of the actual testing piece and being able to apply the reading skills. We had 99% growth across first grade in both of those assessments combined and 97 in second. And for math, we saw 100% growth in reading. In first grade, there was 100% growth in math and 99% in second grade. And again, a lot of this came from the new curriculum that we put into place. We are also proud to say that the one student in second grade who did not show growth actually did not regress. They scored exactly the same. So it's highly possible it was a difference of maybe 1 or 2 questions. There was no significant regression in any subjects or in any grade levels where we did not see 100% growth. And then for Spanish, for our dual language students in first and second grade, again, they started with early literacy. They're moving on to reading as much as they possibly can. We saw 100% growth. So we're proud to say that for our dual language program at DLS, every single student enrolled made growth in Spanish language development. So what this tells us and what we're thinking about in terms of how we address our learning gaps, of course, we had the significant growth that we talked about. We actually only saw 4 students that were showing some regression in first and second grade compared to 10 when we talk about the ELA component, but it was very minimal. In some cases, I believe the highest was 4 total raw score points. So again, it's maybe 2 or 3 questions. Could even possibly been an accidental wrong click, not necessarily a wrong answer. So it's going to be digging a little bit deeper into that data to figure out exactly which questions they missed and why. Was there any sort of common trend in terms of skills that are being missed at the early childhood level? Always keeping in place our collaborative systems that help us for our differentiated instruction and also our progress monitoring. We were much more engaged in our progress monitoring this year, which helped us to really shift our instruction at all grade levels and in the different classrooms. Sharing student work, just like Heather Novotny shared with you earlier today, was a very big part of our PLC model because it allowed that continuous embedded professional development to happen among colleagues and be able to bring new and different ideas into the classrooms. And then our inclusive practice for our SPED students. We are going to be shifting. We will no longer have a self-contained classroom in the fall at DLS. All of our special education students will be mainstreamed, but will be receiving the supports and services that they need per their IEPs. So we are also proud to say that some of these students that are coming from the self-contained classroom not only are moving into mainstream, but are also moving into dual language based on their L1 Spanish that is spoken within the home. So we're supporting those students from a whole child perspective. And then of course, just like we talked about earlier, an additional section of dual language for kindergarten. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Freiberger.
Thanks, Dr. Berger. Thank you, Dr. Berger. So I'm very excited to be able to share this growth with you guys today. You can see the percentage. We have 98% grew in third grade ELA, 93% in fourth, and 90% in fifth. More than that, some of the stickier data I would say is that we set out to have over 50% of our students be in their grade level reading band and at the student growth percentile. And we found that FNP was very aligned with that, and that we saw 58.9% of students reading within their grade level band in FNP, and then 59% on the STAR, reaching that same metric within their grade level band, which for the population we serve, and you know, we're really been intentional on tier 1 instruction. We're happy to have reached those metrics. Because it just means more access to grade level instruction for all of our students. Moving on to our math percentile. So if you can see, 99% of our students grew in third grade math, 93% grew in fourth, and 95% grew in fifth. We are also seeing, again, at that 75th or so, our tier 1 students are growing at high rates as well. We added 31 students in the spring to that 75th to 99th percentile range on STAR. So that's a high percentage. And then within tier 1, shout out to Jen Salazar, who was here tonight, but within tier 1, a lot of our students are growing within that rate. 66% of our students are reaching at or above the that proficiency metric that we measure from. So we're seeing that our SIP goals align. We're seeing that a focus on tier 1 and a focus on and that when we give students the opportunity, that they will rise to the occasion when they're exposed to it. So, all right. And then moving on to SLA. So as you can see, 90% of our students grew in third grade, 96% in fourth, and 86% in fifth. 96% there in fourth grade. Ms. Gomez had a large class, but we adopted a co-teaching model in that class, and we saw a lot of really focused instruction as well. Just highlighting that class because as you can see on the slide deck, it is the highest percentage. But we're seeing again that same attainment being reached by those students, and we're really happy to be supporting them in the ways that need to be supported. Okay, I'm moving on to next steps. So our SIP goal remains a good predictor of how we will perform on STAR. So we're gonna look at that next year as we we've already started some, as I mentioned earlier, we started some systemic changes. So we said if we focused on tier 1 last year and we changed the schedule to make sure that that was the case, that if we then do that for MTSS and give MTSS to all and have those with those extra resources that we're getting from our Director of Student Services and our Director of Engagement and Growth, we're going to continue with that, with those systemic changes that produce results. And then students in tier 1 are growing and they're there to stay. And then students are moving from tier 2 into tier 1. Students in tier 3 are also growing. Their SGP is high, but their percentages are staying the same. And so we're looking into that, and that you'll see that in the next steps below. It's mainly focused on those students. The emphasis on tier 1 works. Kids rise to the occasion when they're given the opportunity. Most notably, we had a self-contained classroom. We reintegrated those students into the gen ed population, and they thrived. So we're going to continue to work on what made that successful and implement that in all of our classrooms across the board. So if you look at next steps, MTSS is built in for all in the next schedule for next year. Made it a point to give the classroom teachers a schedule that we've made together as a BLT. So they have that schedule. MTSS for all, including dual students, is in there. It's going to exist at multiple times during the day so that we can utilize the services of our interventionists. We have a lot of great interventionists, and many of them are bilingual. We can also implement a all hands on deck approach with multiple MTSS slots throughout the day. So, and we can include it in advanced and in dual as well. Additional resources will be accessible to align instruction with priority standards. So we're working on this as that personalized learning team. Also talking to our Director of Engagement and Growth about this, and Director of Student Services about new programming that we can, again, give to teachers so that it can be a plug and play scenario for them. And it can really affect all of our students, because teachers do get bogged down with day to day. And then we're going to utilize a consistent progress monitoring tool. That's where that Easy Bridge comes in, and that's where we can utilize Star Custom as well. All right.
And I'll jump in on Matt's thing real quick, just for a second. Matt has done a very nice job, really his building. He's done a very nice job on personalized learning. He used that term a couple times. Really what that means is the teachers he piloted it with, they wrote individualized assignments and questions for kids to do based on their exact skills they need help with. And so students made incredible growth, not only in these custom assessments you can create in STAR, just in the class as well. And so those are some of the highest performing and growing classes. And so we're having all the summer school teachers practice with those same types of lessons and resources. This summer, they wrote a custom beginning one. They have a custom end. That's how we're assessing them at summer school this year. It's pretty short, but we're getting staff used to that because it's extremely effective to target exactly the skills kids need, not just in intervention, but in every class. I just want to highlight it again. Matt was really trying to be succinct there, but that is an important major shift that's happened at the building.
All right, I'll jump in here with the middle school. So as typical, when we compare the middle school to the intermediate school and also Diamond Lake, our numbers are just a little bit lower. What we are seeing not only as a trend in our building, but just nationwide, is that achievement gap that we hear about, that we talk about a lot, that it just tends to get wider as kids get older. So really we're working on really just kind of zeroing in on those kids that are in need the most. The kids that are in that tier 1, those are the ones that are just, they're growing very quickly. They're growing faster than the national norm. However, that tier 3, that's a question that typically comes up with the board, is the one that's just like, who are these kids? And that's what we've kind of dove into, and that's why these are numbers to celebrate, but they're also numbers to kind of drive our improvement on just becoming better and moving forward and really engaging those tier 3 kids. So obviously we're excited to start implementing. We've been planning for almost an entire year now on standards-based grading. We feel that by targeting what we want kids to know and then assessing them on the level of attainment that they have can only help our kids, versus task completion and making sure we get that stuff handed in and your grade is based upon just that. Other things that we are looking into is which was already mentioned with the other two schools, is a curriculum with, with our SPED population. A number of our SPED kids are in that tier 3 range. So just to have a curriculum for reading and also for math, we haven't had that for quite some time. So we're very excited about that. I know our case managers are very excited about it as well. But also that, as Dr. Berger mentioned here, that push-in model, our data suggests and points to that our kids progress when they are exposed to grade level content. So why are we pulling them out to give them resource to remediate things as kids we're teaching them at a slower rate than what's being taught at the regular, grade level content team. So that push-in model, kind of disbanding more of that resource, and pushing them into that tier 1 instruction, we feel as though it's only going to help us. And then also what our case managers have been diligently doing is looking at each student's IEP, kind of just determining what skill deficits they have, and that's where they're going to pull out and specifically target those skill sets. So that can only help us as well. Along with this, at first glance, these numbers, they don't typically jump out on. There's a lot of movement going on, but I wanted to kind of highlight a few things on the ELA range, ELA slide, and then I'll jump into math here as well. But 6th grade reading, what I wanted to do was I wanted to do a deeper dive and compare the 6th grade kids this spring, as compared to when they were 5th graders last year at the same exact time. And what we saw with that tier 3, our tier 3 numbers decreased by 19%, which is definitely a win. Our 7th grade reading, last year at this time, there was 36 of them in tier 3 ELA, tier 3 reading. There's now 24, so a decrease of 33%. And then also at the tier 1 level with our 7th graders, they were at 56 last spring, and they are at 62 now. So an increase of 10%, which they're trending in the right direction. We as middle schoolers, we just like to move a little slower though, but we're heading in the right direction though. And then also here to kind of highlight our 8th graders, can't leave them out. We had 54 of them last year. They've gone to 62 this spring, an increase of 13%. But if you compare them to their 7th grade year, when they were in the fall, they were at 46, that tier 1 level. So to go from 46 to 62, which is a significant increase of 26% of our kids moving into that tier 1 level of our ELA assessments. So definitely some very, very nice wins there. If I could switch over to math. All right, perfect, thank you. So our math is typically a little higher overall when we start looking at students that grow, the percentage of students that grow. So this is typical to what we saw last year as well, where our 6th graders were at 84%, and our 7th and 8th graders are close behind here at that 80% level as well. Highlights with that is, as you guys know, the 6th grade math, we've kept pace for the most part, and given kind of what situation our 6th graders have been through, Polly Kluver is coming in and kind of stepping into that role. She's never taught math, I don't believe, but she did a very nice job. And really, those numbers that we are seeing from fall to spring, given the circumstances, they've held steady, which is a win in itself. And then also, I just kind of want to highlight the 8th grade math students. Really, we started talking about what kind of motivation do they have in April and May. But they really did a nice job. And I know they were trying to win our academic challenge. They got close. They were one test away from taking the win from the 6th graders, but they've grown from at this time last year, they were at 60 students in that tier 1 level. And then this year at this time, they're at that 70 kids met that level as well. But as I said before, the kids that really fall in that tier 3 range, we're really kind of hyper focused on them with our school improvement plan, as Dr. Cunningham has mentioned, with kind of focusing on that achievement gap that we're seeing with our EL and our SPED kids. But also I'm very excited, and I know our case managers are, of having a math curriculum for this coming year. That's something they have not had. And also, what we're looking to do as well is just that more frequent progress monitoring, but also with that, just less invasive progress monitoring, where it's short little snippets based upon specific skills that we're looking for, and hey, have they reached that yet, or not? So those are kind of those things that we're looking for with reading and math here for next year. if I go off to our actions and next steps there, Dr. Cunningham, many students met their growth goals, yet our subgroups are the ones that we'd like them to move at a faster rate. That's really what it comes down to. But the number of students in our different tiers is progressing in their right direction. So that's very very encouraging to hear and to see. Like I mentioned before, our school improvement goal is going to be aligned with, kind of closing that achievement gap. What can we do with our tier 3, our EL kids to really kind of boost them up and have and help them to show progress? I've already kind of mentioned here, the different curricula that are going to be involved. We are going to be starting with TWIG next year with our science curriculum. And we are looking to pilot, possibly an ELA curriculum at that tier 1 level as well. Although that's kind of in the beginning steps of that. But as I mentioned before, collecting data and student progress with interventions, but also that push-in model that we hope to see some gains there as well.
I'm gonna back up just a couple second, because just to answer or not start addressing a couple of questions some of the board members had that they were emailing me earlier today. Or first one being, so if we talk about some of our students that are in the tier 2 and 3, the ones that didn't show growth from fall to spring testing wise, about 75% of them are English language learners, or multilingual is the term we use now, English language learners. In terms of national trends, yes, it does get harder once 6th grade hits. If you're not out of EL, you typically never exit EL all the way through high school. That is true. It is true. We mentioned earlier in the access test today that scores are, we released a report right after we got our score saying that scores are going down nationally in terms of that test. I'm gonna be really careful when I say this, particularly for students whose first language is Spanish that are coming not from Spain, but from Latin American countries. And so that really moves us to say we've got to find ways to support our students much more than we are. And so that'll be a lot of our different action steps, if that makes sense, because and there are schools, there are districts we work with that find success, and we have found success with some of our students, but we want to see really a multilingual learner has to make 9 months growth in 5 months time is really what it is to truly close a gap. And that's very aggressive and it's very difficult, but we have really talented individuals that can do it if we're pointing our attention in the right direction. And we'll talk about that in a moment at some of those action steps. But right now in our district, we typically make 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, which is what you want. And what we see is starting in 3rd grade, our students come in at about they leave 2nd grade at a 3rd grade level, which is what we want. Actually just a little bit above a 3rd grade level. And they test coming into 3rd grade at about an early 2nd grade level. So in that summer, if that makes sense, there's a change. And we have a lot of those students at summer school for a reason this year. Our biggest groups are 2nd and 3rd graders at summer school this year. They were heavily targeted to address some of this. But we see that at that point moving forward, we're making 1 year's growth, but it's not what we have to do for our English language learners, if that makes sense. The vocabulary is more rigorous, the text gets more rigorous, none of that changes. And we have to meet our students' needs. So I just want to point out that a little bit to address some of that. But the next piece, and I've really grown to hate this graph so much. And so I tried to find any other way to do this, and I really struggle with it. And Elise was asking questions about it. So basically, we're trying to show in tier 1, how are kids doing, where are they aligning? And so these are broken up by grade level. So this one is the reading one, and it starts in 1st grade because kindergarten's isn't taking early lit. So I just took reading only. So to give you an idea, to make sure I wrote this down, if a student is scoring in the 65th percentile, all right, so this kind of breaks down by the 25th to 49, 50th to 74th. So if you're in the 65th, you're testing basically a grade level above in general. You're a grade level above. And it's not perfect because it depends on the questions the kid gets. And then if they're 75th, they're typically 2 grade levels above or more, if that makes sense. So if a kid is moving around, so if kids are in the green, those kids are typically 2 grade levels ahead. And then 90th, they show this greater than sign. You're off the scale for what STAR is going to measure, if that makes sense. So the question I got from Ms. Bayless was, is this numbers or percents? This is by percent. And so, for example, what this is showing, if I was to blow up my own screen, in that circle I have, it says 4% of students are in the 90th percentile or above in third grade at the beginning, and they go to 6% by the spring. The best way in our district is to think of each kid as a percent almost, because, and actually in a lot of grades, they're more than 1%, just because they're less than 100. I know researchers sometimes get really upset if you're below 150. They say your data is not, but whatever. We love our kids. So we think they're great. So that percent is basically a number, almost interchangeable, if that makes sense. So like 32% of our students, if I'm looking at their grade spring, are testing in the 25th to 49th. 13, if you add those up, that's not going to equal 100% because I took out the bottom tier 2 and 3, if that makes sense. So to try to answer that question a little bit, same idea with math. It's trying to show where are all our tier 1 kids. It's 30th to 99th is a big range to try to show where they line up. Okay, this is a bonus. We like to do bonus assessments. So this is the Apple assessment. For the first time, we took it in grades 3 through 5. It's meant to assess Spanish in all 4 domains, just like the access test does in English. Our kids beat the national average in every single area for every single measure in the intermediate school for the first time they were tested. So the national average is the orange dot in the bar graph is how we did in each of those. So it's a good reminder that many of our students are L1 Spanish and they're performing well, and we're performing dual language instruction is good, and also lets us know that if our students are not performing in English, but they're doing well in Spanish, that we can bridge and support them in English. So it's an important lesson to teach. Then this is 8th grade. So I'm just showing you outgoing 5th and outgoing 8th. 8th grade, we have to use the black dot because the bar graph includes kids in Spanish 1 for the first time. I can't get rid of those kids when I do this. So since I've done this, I figured out a way to do it. But the black dot is where we are. So we are at or above the national average in every area. In this particular case, we missed writing by a little bit. That's, of course, going to be a continued focus for that group. So outstanding scores on our Spanish side, but it informs us to remind us that our students are awesome and we want to help them access the same achievement in English. So this is, of course, what hopefully the board has seen, some of these different elements we've talked about tonight and throughout the year, but let me get into next steps a little bit. This is where kind of the rubber hits the road a little with what we're trying to do. So, and we may report our data differently next year than this presentation, the way we're doing it here. So first, how can our grant support after school programming? The reality is there's some funding pieces that have now changed with the end of the ESSER funds. And so we're going to need the partnership of the community support grant support to provide that support for our kids after school. We're going to redesign our unit plans. We mentioned that. We want to make sure every teacher is following a clear day-by-day scope and sequence lesson planning. Some grades have it, they developed that, some didn't. We just need every teacher to be accountable to that. And that's going to help to make sure our kids are getting exposed to the right vocab at the right time and the right lessons. Now, the new science curriculum is just a kind of a part of it. Language, the reason I'm saying language targets, that comes out of WIDA, that's a great practice. Teachers have to get used to the fact that I have more multilingual learners in my class than I don't. And learning a new language is a different lens. And so this is a major shift for teachers. We're providing this training all this summer at the Summer Professional Learning Academy. We have 5 teachers at the GLAD model training. That's a training that's extraordinarily effective for language learning, especially because it's vocab heavy, and teachers have to be extraordinarily intentional and assume the person in front of them doesn't know that word and they don't know the context to get to the word. And it changes what you do. Intervention progress reports are going to be created for families. So we've asked the interventionists to send home a report card that gives every skill for families to see that if those kids are in intervention, how they're breaking it down. So every team has done that on the coaching side, and we'll get some of that information that Joy was asking for. The Illinois Literacy Plan has come out, and our area we identified as an area that we have to reincorporate is phonics. So they call it the science of reading. And really what it is phonics. And so we've kind of gone to whole word and we're going back to phonics again. And so there's some pieces we have to add back in. And that's really a good practice for English, any learner. English language learner is a great practice. So we'll incorporate those pieces. Standards-based report card is a huge piece that will help us to know if students are meeting some of these skills, especially we talked about the middle school a little bit tonight. We drew some attention there. What are you meeting the standard at grade level? Essentially is what you're being measured. Sometimes the grades tell you I do my work and I get it in. Standards-based report card says, am I on track? Even if the test doesn't tell me, this should. They will continue with some of the data analysis. Guaranteed and viable curriculum is the level 3 for high reliability schools. Right now, Matt's building is the first that's achieved it. Erica's put all her information in, and Brandon will in the next week or so, and they're all going to hit that level 2. But level 3 is about closing gaps and making sure your curriculum truly is what it needs to be. So we're taking full advantage of this. Peer observations will be a big part of what they're going to do on the data-driven side. EduClimber, we talked a little bit tonight about how we're starting to use that a little bit more. Dr. Berger has a slide coming up of really her role in a lot of this, but PLCs, it's something that we really haven't changed the structure of since really we started using them in 2017. PLC being professional learning community, where teachers meet weekly to go through student data and work. Really, we have to work, I guess, to summarize again, with the addition of Erica coming in this position, we're now going to be extraordinarily, I'm going to use the word aggressive, maybe it might not be the right word, but we're going to be very aggressive about closing any gaps, meeting learners' needs very quickly, if that makes sense, because we're going to be able to have more, not just coaching, but accountability based, if that makes sense. And so we're going to take full advantage of it. And that's another reason why we're bringing FastBridge in, which is that progress monitoring tool, because teachers talk every 6 weeks, but really every 18 weeks, even or 12 weeks at the trimester. We're going to push it where every 2 weeks. So by the time 6 weeks hit, intervention has 3 rounds of data on an English language learner. And if they're not seeing the progress they need to see, we're making adjustments much faster. So that's that's something that districts do to help see the needle move for multilingual learners. But Erica's really going to take a lot of the PLC piece on the structure and the training of what that needs to look like and supporting buildings across that. We mentioned the school improvement plans will have a goal to close the gap. So every teacher will have that on right in the front of their mind. The manual and some of those pieces, what we updated this year will go into place. The SEL committee Robin's working on to make sure that we're supporting our kids in behavior and social emotionally. The summer camp planning we've worked on, really it started. We have 230 students almost in it, and it's totally enrichment based, and it's been awesome. I'm walking around and I'm seeing like gardens grow, like people, there's all kinds of stuff happening that's really engaging, but they're using the vocab. And that's the idea. So this is just, I'm going to kick it over now to Erica to talk a little about some more of what she's going to do. We talked about Erica lots tonight, I've noticed. Well,
I feel like.
but I felt like we need to define it.
Special. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
good.
So to talk a little bit more about some of the specifics with the Director of Engagement and Growth position, looking at these two pieces side by side, it's really looking at how are our students and our staff engaging in all 3 buildings in every single classroom to ensure that we have these high levels of engagement, that we're personalizing learning for what our students need. And what the Director of Engagement and Growth will do is help to coach principals and staff with the whole personalized learning initiative and be able to hold people accountable for making sure that these things happen and they're happening consistently. We're also going to have some different measuring tools, how this incorporates with growth of how much engagement is happening and then what results are you seeing, as we're also going to be incorporating progress monitoring more in all 3 buildings as well. And one of the other big pieces too, it has to do with designing and implementing the professional learning community systems. For the PLC model, that really can be absolutely great to get teams working together even stronger and bringing that student work into team meetings like we talked about before to be able to provide each other with professional development and making it consistent across our district. So if at one point in time you're at a position in DLS and you change to a position at West Oak, it's the same system in place that can allow for that collaborative work to happen. Even though you might be working with different people on a different subject or anything like that, we all have that same idea of what our team meetings can look like to be effective. And a lot with that has to do with incorporating the monthly growth data evaluation that we have. So we will continue to have rotational cycles within our team meetings, such as a week where it would be an academic focus of ELA, perhaps a week of focus having to do with MTSS or special education, a week focus with math. In our ELA meetings and in our math meetings, our instructional coaches will be stepping into those meetings. So if there's someone who hasn't done a coaching cycle, they're automatically going to have coaching at least twice a month, even if it's just to start at the team meeting level, and then wrap up at the end of the month looking at the data. So teams will be able to kind of choose like, okay, what's one of the biggest things we want to focus on for this month. Because as we're pulling apart this data, we're going to be able to identify where is our grade level struggling the most, or what seems to be a trend among our entire building, grade level, and or district. In working with the MTSS model, and one of the new pieces that we just got from Renaissance is the whole concept that if there is a skill that across your building, grade level, or district might be lacking, it is not considered a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 performance anymore. It's considered a universal tier because it's universal that everyone struggles with it. So we shouldn't have 90 kids getting pulled out for comprehension if everyone has trouble with comprehension. That's when we're going to be looking at what we're doing in the classroom to engage our students in being able to master that skill better. And then also talking about pieces of incorporating more of our community programs and some of the outreach that we have district-wide. There's been some thoughts of even making community cuddles go to all 3 buildings so that we're providing our students with engagement in a different way, and actually doing some things with CLC at the middle school level, actually bringing in some of our corporations that are around us to be able to get our students to start thinking about, yes, I know I'm only in 6th grade, but man, high school is going to be here tomorrow. And then the next thing you know, I'm 18. What happens then? So giving our students the opportunity to think about different options that they have here locally, and things that they can also do on an extended level, such as staying home for college, going away for college, vocational schools, beauty schools, anything like that. Giving our kids an opportunity to understand that they can find their interests and passions and that they can succeed. The other piece too is thinking about how we are always going to be modeling, prioritizing, and measuring D76 core values, our mission, and our vision. I think we can say it's probably a little bit stronger with certain grade levels at certain times, and this, that, and the other, but really making this consistent so that everyone is getting the same message and children are understanding the reason why they're here. That it's not just a time filler. We're actually here to learn and succeed, and to be able to create some independent goals and self goals that you would want to achieve. And then of course, always teaching everyone to level up, lean in, and sparkle on. We will be doing that. And with that, the Diamond Dish will be going district-wide as well. So all 3 buildings are going to have an opportunity to participate in that broadcasting type experience. For the first time, DLS actually did a Diamond Dish episode to our graduates. And from what I understand, 8th grade absolutely loved it. And they thought it was so cool, and to, you know, see pictures and just think about things again from a different lens of what I'm doing here really matters. Every moment really does matter. And now I have, I believe one of your 8th graders who gave the speech, Miss Tannenbaum, her kindergarten sister, Allie, was one of the lead broadcasters on that episode. She was very excited to see her sister give her a tribute. So we're excited about strengthening that engagement as well. And then also just finally, again, on the piece with the growth is just how I can support and coach principals with instructional leadership, data management, and accountability, and just thinking of some different timelines and things that we're going to put in place. Brandon, Matt, and I have been meeting and talking about some different things that they're interested in and how they want to strengthen some different systems in their building. So I am extremely excited for the Director of Engagement and Growth. I think they have wonderful work on their plate and will do a great job.
Whoever that is.
Whoever that is, right? They start July 1.
And just to highlight, I think what Stringdella said about with Sammy, this position will allow for a lot of those pieces where we're gonna, it is a lot of work to work with the grant, but you can point the cannon of a lot of resources and meeting and connecting to the community, which is a huge part of seeing kids feel and believe they're successful. So that's gonna be really great. Okay, with that, it's question time.
Opportunity to ask questions. I think we talked about this a month ago before you all approved the director's position, but a lot of the questions that came up tonight as well as earlier today about the gaps and of our students, and how do we engage them more? How do we get more interest? And it's not just about the academic pieces, but about the community pieces. What are some things that we can do to provide more support for whatever our kids need? And I had shared with you one of the reasons and rationale for this position whenever this person begins on July 1st and who this person will be. But as a district, we prioritize this and that's where we're gonna invest our money, right? Like, yes, we gave up an assistant principal that may have been managing student behaviors and helping with some of the operational pieces at the middle school. Not that they're not important and not that they're not needed, but we feel like this position is going to impact more kids and more staff and more families and make things more consistent and have more of an impact district-wide. So I hope you see that because I know those are some of the questions and concerns that you may have had about some of our students and the gaps that we're seeing and maybe how the growth is maybe declining or not growing as fast as the kids are getting older. But the systems that we're going to put in place and with Erica and Peter and Robin working closely together and making it a system district-wide, I think staff are going to respond to that. And ultimately, our kids are going to be impacted positively with that. So I just wanted to share that because I want to thank you again for having enough confidence in us to give us the approval for this position, because I think it's going to be very, very successful. No pressure, Erica. All right, sorry, questions?
No, you can go ahead. Okay, well. Okay, as usual, I have random questions, but first of all, I wanted to say that I feel like I don't know how long I've been on this board, a long time.
9 years.
Nine and a half years. We've always had an achievement gap. There's always been issues with growth at the middle school. And I feel like after listening to this tonight, the steps that you're taking are different. You're looking at just approaching things in a completely different way. And so I feel really hopeful that this is going to really move the needle. I like hearing you talk about being aggressive. I think we need to be aggressive. Like, we don't want our kids graduating behind. You know, we want them prepared for high school. We want that to set them up for success. I know everybody wants that. And I do think that, you know, hearing you taking a look at different things and different approaches and looking at different data, and I think that's exciting. So I wanted to say thank you for that. I just had a couple of kind of random questions. At the intermediate school, you know, you definitely prioritized the ELA growth with changing band and giving more minutes to that. Do you think that kind of that change will kind of stay with those kids, and then next year when we're looking at them in 6th grade, we're going to see, you know, continued growth there? Like, do you think that that's really setting them up foundationally?
Personally, yeah. And because of the fact that we also gave that opportunity, we didn't take away the opportunity to be in band. But it was, I mean, it was before my time there, but it was given to them after the school. But personally, yes, as I was mentioning before, like, we had to, and this has been mentioned at the table just now, but we have to believe that students can learn, and they all will if they're given the opportunity to do so. So in Tier 1 instruction, when we gave that back to them, they rose to that occasion. I'm talking across the board. Like, we had, just even speaking, it was an interesting case study with math too, because we had some different factions that actually, like, there wasn't a full systemic change to it quite yet. Like, for example, SPED, we were adopting the math curriculum to Fidelity. So even our SPED students grew at a 12% rate compared to ELA students, which grew at a 3% rate, just in that subcategory of students. And I feel, and I know Erica and Brandon and I are all on the same page, and Peter as well, and Robin, sorry. But like that, with the alignment in that and more focus on giving exposure and less factions and silos, that yeah, it's going to be sustained throughout. Sorry, that was really long-winded, but
No,
I'm pretty
that's
excited
great.
about it. So
No, that was great.
Yes.
I think,
Yes.
I mean, we were excited, I think, to see that change resulted in really positive growth, right? Because I mean, that was a big change for our district. The other question I have for you, Matt, is with looking at those 4th grade SLA scores and how Ms. Gomez students basically performed, are there ways you can leverage things that she was doing kind of across the board and implement that?
yeah, that's part of, you know, we had some hard conversations as a BLT this year about getting MTSS and an all hands on deck approach for every subgroup of our students. And so it was really hard to do it for dual, but in the way that we structured specials and in the way that we structured our interventionist time, we gave MTSS to all students. So yeah, so in that sense, yes, the systemic changes that we made to the schedule are gonna mean that our interventionists need to get creative and they need to push in. So it's gonna be a necessity, but it's also in that necessity, I think they're gonna see the growth and they're gonna get excited about it, in their due time as well. So yes, there's ways to repeat it. We're also looking at creative solutions. Dr. Cunningham and myself have been discussing this just actually today, about potentially getting we have a lot of diverse skill sets on our team, particularly with interventionists, and possibly getting one of our bilingual interventionists to teach an advanced course so that we can be more equitable with the way students are placed. But that's just preliminary right now.
Sure.
But that kind of metric can work as well. And then co-teaching and then those creative solutions.
No, that's great.
Joy, and I just want to comment on your first question about the 5th grade. Correct me if I'm wrong. 5th grade was the grade level that made the most growth out of all grade levels
Yeah, that's
in the
great.
district. And I attribute a lot of that to the changes in the schedule. Because kids were actually in the classrooms getting that
Yeah.
tier 1 instruction.
Yeah. No, that's great to see. I was gonna ask, in terms of the instructional coaches, like in looking at the new kind of instructional programs and initiatives, and kind of hearing Peter, what you were gonna say about that, are they gonna get additional training and support to help facilitate, more of these things, especially with like language targets and kind of using that different lens?
Yeah, I want them to go to the GLAD model training. Neither one of their schedules allowed it for this summer because it's a 5-day commitment in DeKalb, a beautiful DeKalb. And they were not able to do it, but they're upset they didn't and they want to go. So we just sent them to Marzano training on standards-based report cards, for example. They want ELD standard training. Really, we've kind of given some of that to Rachel Johnson to lead. But just to diversify what we're doing a little bit. But yeah, they're going to get additional pieces. And honestly, we have a new coach, and part of that instructional coaching data, you saw less responses from the middle school, partially because that coach had been on leave for about a month, and the coaches kind of hound and incentivize teachers to take it.
Sure.
And so we missed a little bit of that, but the new coach is going to receive training period on just our expectations for, we call student-centered coaching is the model we use.
Okay.
So they're going to need support just on really that particular piece. But yeah, this is one of the things that Sharon Tweed, for example, has started to do is she's starting to report data out as biliteracy data as opposed to balanced literacy, if they're both exist.
Yeah.
But so she reports on biliteracy trajectories now, and she's changing a lot of the way she talks about literacy, language literacy, in more of a language acquisition piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So we're just doing some of the basics with that, but really they're going to be providing a lot of when I say where you need learning targets and language targets posted, they're the ones that are going to make sure that staff understand what that means
Okay.
and how to get them up.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Okay, I have one last question. Brandon, this is for you. Okay, so in looking at the data from the middle school, do we also, for like the 8th grade class, do we have high school placement data? And does that give us any additional insight into how the kids are doing? Like, has that changed over the years?
Yeah, we meet as a Stevenson feeder with Troy Gobble. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but we meet with him, a total of once per year, and we always discuss, their placement and how the last year's class did as freshmen at Stevenson. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of data, and we don't have that kind of meeting with Mundelein at this time. I could always ask Dr. Rios and see if she has something else, but it looks like you have something else to add there.
Well, I was going to say Mundelein is becoming a little trickier because they're going now to earned honors in almost every subject.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're going to place most of their kids in,
Okay,
every
yeah.
year it's different. And so they're going to place more and more of their students in that. I know I talked with Stacy Gorman and she said that, what they're trying to adjust to is we're sending so many multilingual learners to the high school that it's blowing up their heritage program, and they're
Yeah.
trying to adjust to that. On the Stevenson side, they typically have sent the principal an annual report where kids get placed and how they're doing. So in the few years of data we had, like typically we outperform in science. We're slightly lower in ELA, and we're usually on par in math. In terms of how the other schools are coming in, if that makes sense. So I couldn't speak to this year's, but that was the last couple. It was above in science, below in ELA, on in math.
If I could add there to that, Peter, you know, overall, when we place kids, yeah, obviously Stevenson, they're able to jump up or jump down as they wish, but overall, our students are typically the ones that, once they're placed, they don't really move. So we're probably, you know, we like to think we're properly placing them, you know, initially versus the other schools that feed in. But also just that grade wise in their ELA, in their science classes, they've done exceptionally well. And obviously this only makes up a fraction of what our entire student body is in the middle school. But once they're going there, they're doing really well.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, you know, those percentiles don't necessarily give us the whole picture.
No,
And
yeah.
so, you know, it's just, I think it's important to all of us to see kind of when they leave here, are they able to be successful? Did we set them up well?
That is always the concern with all of our.
Yeah. That's great. My last thing just is one comment, and that is I'm excited to see the accountability piece of Erica's position, because I feel like sometimes that part has been missing, or at least is hard to implement, you know, district-wide. So,
Well, and it's hard to adjust and make
Right.
changes if we don't have those pieces to say, is it working or not working?
right. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Jen. I have a couple of just comments and questions. The first thing I just want to mention that knowing that we're doing well on the Apple assessment is really wonderful. And I'm very hopeful, and I think this was mentioned, potentially to involve our families even more than we're already. You know, seeing our families here tonight, I know as a community member and seeing the joy and the thrill that they have to see their students grow, I feel very confident that, you know, given opportunities to assist their child in whatever way they can, I know that you know, and again, I know this was discussed, I'm just kind of really excited about it. The idea that we can, you know, see that our students are very capable and, you know, rise to the occasion, and it can be even better if the people at home who want to help them have even more tools available to them. So I'm excited to see how that plays out as far as, you know, getting feedback from the community. What can we do to support not just the student, but, you know, what do parents need? What do guardians need to assist? You know, I know some families have people at home that are very capable in certain areas and can assist their student, and some don't. And, you know, and that's just the nature of every house. So I'm excited that some of our grant money and other things can be focused on that, because I think as we see, we have a great community and they want to do whatever they can, as all parents do, to help their students be successful and set them up for success in high school and beyond. So I just want to comment on that because I think it's really, really important. I have a couple questions. One, kind of piggybacking on what Mrs. Gomez did in 4th grade, but I know some of our middle school classes are co-taught. And I was curious to know if that model helps or has seen improvement in scores in sort of the growth when it is a co-taught model. The other, again, a little different, but kind of goes similar. I know that we're, you know, the science of reading, as far as, you know, all the way through incorporates a lot of organic experiences with language, listening, you know, speaking, you know, kind of not just reading a book, but a lot of a full picture. And I know when Mrs. Salzman was here, and I know she teaches or is part of a, you know, listening, speaking, you know, oral speaking, you know, class. And I was curious to know if that is something that might be implemented, or the components of that to kind of go along with science of reading be implemented, not just at the middle school, but at the other grades, just to kind of, continue that trend as far as looking at the entire, picture of what is literacy, what is language, and how do we, how do we take full advantage of all those opportunities. So those were 2 questions.
Yeah, sure. I'll start off the first one here. So, I mean, co-teaching, I've seen it done exceptionally well. And then, when it's being implemented correctly, with co-teaching, both teachers have to have a common prep time. They're both planning together. This is what I'm doing. This is what you're doing. This is how we're going to divide them up. This is how we're doing it. It takes a lot of time, and it does, and it's quite a strain on our SPED team. We have a phenomenal group. I'm really excited about the people that we're bringing in here for this coming year. The push-in model kind of gives us a little bit more flexibility in we're here to assist. We can kind of pull kids as needed into smaller groups. We can kind of piggyback off of that lead teacher. As I'm working through the schedule in past years, I'm always just like, ooh, you look at the SPED's schedule, and they might have 6 preps, 5 or 6 preps, which is daunting for anybody that's been in education. It's hard to do when you're doing that much. It's hard to do that much well, rather than, really being able to key in on certain skills. So we just felt as though, this not only accelerating kids versus trying to remediate them, we would be getting more bang for our buck, but also really just dialing in on what specific skills that they're deficient in, and whether they're 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade. If I like the same skill that you have, that you lack, and we're in different grade levels, we can pull those kids and work specifically on them for certain periods of time throughout the week. So we just felt as though that would, and what we have seen with kids experiencing that tier 1 level instruction, is that they're progressing faster, and that's what we need, because we really haven't seen that with what we're doing. And if what we're doing isn't working, let's try something else. This is going to be more push-in. And like I said, that's just for the common prep time, but also just kind of our different approach on trying to speed these kids up.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. So what we say when we say co-taught, is it really co-taught, right? And so I think what was happening was that all of the classes were not true co-taught classes. And so our special education teachers were not being utilized to the best, and to use their skills in the best way to support students. What we're doing moving forward is I just pulled up data from before, why we ended up looking at changing this a little bit for next year, is that we looked at the data, and this is just special education students, it's not the whole class, but the special education students who were in a co-taught class versus special education students who were pulled out into an instructional class, and how much growth did they make? So not the percentile where they're at, the growth that they made. And what the data showed us is that the students who were receiving Core 1 instruction and receiving different services at another time from a special education teacher made so much more growth than students who were in an instructional classroom with 4 kids and not getting that same rich experience. So we are not going to have any instructional classes next year. All kids will be in a core classroom, gen ed classroom, receiving core instruction, and then pulled out to really focus on skill deficits to fill gaps, instead of giving the teachers the flexibility to really meet students' needs where they are and help them grow, as opposed to helping them get through a class. So that was kind of the thought process behind it. As Brandon had said, true co-teaching does take a lot of planning and trying to give all of the students core instruction. We don't have the number of teachers to really make it fully effective. So we're definitely going to use them to support students in the best way that the students need.
I'll add as well. This is turning into an answer by committee. What we talked about this at our Institute Day in March, that when Paula Kluth came in, that Illinois is one of the biggest offenders of pull-out services, that we just take kids out all the time, and it's typically not very effective. And depending on the situation, but it typically isn't statistically. So I guess I'm gonna try to be very nice about this. So Robin, there was a philosophy in the Student Services Department that more kids should be pulled out. And so that had, especially at the middle school level, that's been an experience this year. To Robin's credit, she's kind of come with Brandon and said, we have to stop doing this and put them back in the rooms again. Because exposure to core content is one of the biggest indicators you're going to grow. And Matt has seen that in his building, because his students that are not similar to the middle school, the students that are not growing are the ones that are getting pulled out the most, if that makes sense. And so that it's not a perfect, like exactly that's the rule, but generally the less you do that, on the more, we say more exposure to tier 1 is the fancy way we say it. The more exposure to the core curriculum around your peers, you tend to grow more than if you get pulled out. So that's really what is happening at all the buildings, but it's certainly at the middle school, a major change there. And I'll also add, by adding Diane Enriquez into the SPED program, that takes a lot of pressure off Nicole Lynch as our EL resource teacher, because a lot of what she was having to do was service kids that need to be duly serviced. And now that left a lot of students that were very early, they were newcomer status, to not have the kind of supports they need. And so this will also allow Nicole this year to be in more rooms than she's used to being in, if that makes sense, and to support the core content. So that's also gonna be a middle school shift. Structurally, that should be very helpful. I don't know if Matt or Erica, you want to answer how the balanced literacy block works in your building in terms of speaking to some of those different elements, read alouds, those types of things.
Sure. So I can say at the early childhood level, we try to explore every possible component that has to go with language development. In some cases, in working with students as soon as pre-K, it's literally learning how to form your mouth and use your tongue and lips and all that kind of stuff to say the words correctly and appropriately, because for many of our students, they've never heard this vocabulary before because they're coming from homes with a different language, sometimes same language such as Spanish, but a different dialect. We teach very formal Spanish here that might not necessarily be what they're learning at home. So we try to do as much as we possibly can in terms of speaking and listening with our younger grades teaming up with older grades. So for example, our kindergartners have reading buddies with second graders and that kind of stuff. And they really sort of serve as what we like to consider reading role models for our kids. So there are times where the second grader will be reading and the kindergartner will correct them. They'll purposely give like an error to see, and teachers will track that to see if the kindergartner is picking up on that intentional error. Because in turn, what we're finding out is that they actually do know this skill, they just don't know how to perform it yet. So they might hear it incorrectly, but can't say it correctly. Does that make sense? So it's that kind of different incorporation that we're doing early on, so that, again, always the goal before they go to West Oak is that they can put all of these pieces together for a stronger reading foundation.
Just to expand on it a bit. So what our reading block looks like is a whole group lesson. Then they break off into some small groups. There's an interactive read aloud that's typically done whole group. So, and then they do, it's a gradual release model typically. So some of the things we're working on next year and that were mentioned in the next steps would be through personalized learning and through our team and Erica creating these. I've mentioned it on probably ad nauseum, but just if they're teaching a specific standard, that there would be resources to to plug and play. So they click, like, I'm teaching informational main idea. I can click a resource and now I have multiple modalities to teach in, so that I'm not sending them back to their seats to go on, go on a specific program, but that it's aligned with what I just taught. So it's almost, you're remediating, but at grade level, and operating in a gradual release form. So that's what we're looking to implement next year, more systemically across the board.
So I was really excited to hear that Miss Gomez was doing a co-teaching as well. I've seen co-teaching firsthand and how effective it is and how much planning it does take. And you need a great team with a lot of good training, but I would like just love to know that that could be something on the horizon, like at a fourth grade level, which is a great year to do it, to fourth and fifth. Obviously, the middle school, they would benefit tremendously from co-taught. You could have a larger class size and have two, like the gen ed and the special ed teacher working together, planning. It takes a lot of effort, and I know that. But I was for like a second really excited that that was going to be a new instructional model. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, because like was mentioned, I don't know if we have, staffing isn't my department, but like, I was meaning that, we're gonna do, by co-teaching, I was meaning that more push in, right? Like, so, right now the model is there's a tier 3 student, they're getting pulled out 5 times a week. That's not working. So what we need to do is the all hands on deck approach that I was mentioning, was that our interventionist would be pushing in and delivering instruction with another teacher. So it would revolve around some co-planning and some co-teaching and some parallel teaching in the moment. But I'm so sorry to have misspoke and said that it was like, but in Ms. Gomez's class, instead of splitting the class, we opted to use one of our amazing instructional aides and to push in and teach bilingual. And so just to, I'm sorry to throw water on the fire, but I was more meaning that we were going to utilize our staff to push in.
So if it's not being a co-taught model, then whatever you did, even if it was a partially co-taught model, clearly had some good effect.
Right.
And I would think like, can you reproduce that to 5th grade? Follow that group of 4th graders. And I know it's like planning and scheduling now. It's, school year's just ended, but it's going to begin before we know it. But can you reproduce that? Because it clearly like something good came out of that.
I am confident with the current schedule that we made that we can reproduce it in some ways. But a full co-teaching, two people in each classroom is not.
I think that's like I've seen firsthand that the push-in model is for sure better. The kids get pulled out. They need to be exposed to grade level content, surrounded by the grade level peers. Just at least hearing the vocabulary and hearing that content taught, I know shows good results. But on Joy's comment, I'm really proud that you use the word aggressive, because I like that. I like creative. You guys are being very creative with your resources, and it's okay to be a little aggressive. It's not being cocky. It's showing like, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's get out of our comfort zone. And I really respect that. So thank you all. Mr. Peterson, a couple things that I think that you're not mentioning, because I think your scores looked really good. I know what national trends look like, and I know other districts that I know very well, and the data looks the same. The primary schools, you know, are 100% everybody, and the middle schools look really, I think you look really good. And I think you're not mentioning how many kids have moved in and they're tier 3 because they're coming with trauma, they're refugees. And to Mr. Candela's point, they're coming with a lot of baggage of hunger and other things that we just don't even think about maybe. I mean, you guys probably think about it more than we do, but they're coming with a lot of trauma. And now suddenly like, hey, take this 2-hour test. And oh, you didn't do so well, you're in tier 3. But I think like, how else, of course they're going to be in tier 3. And I don't think that you didn't mention that, but that's a big reason you have a big tier 3 group, because they're refugees who have like struggled to get here. I just think that I know also nationally, 5th grade and 8th grade, there's a ton of move-ins because they want to be there for like the next year's school, like especially 8th grade. They want to be there for Mundelein High School or Stevenson. And so having a big transient group come in with who knows what skills that you haven't tracked since kindergarten, like, I think you should be really proud of that data. I think it's really hard to manage kids with so much need, and there's so much need out there right now.
No, you bring up great points. You know, we within the district, there's a certain level of, you know, we expect excellence, and, you know, and that goes with every building is, you know, middle school. Yeah, we want to be right up there too. And are we ever satisfied? You know, absolutely not. And we're gonna keep pushing to do our best and to hopefully do our best for the sake of our kids.
Oh, God. We'll get Bobna's cheerleading uniform back on and she can perform.
I need her to come for a star.
I know. She was fantastic. Okay. So that wraps up our presentations. Moving on to the business agenda, the omnibus vote agenda is just up for review. And we have a couple items up for action. So I'm going to move on to personnel. Be it resolved, the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the personnel items as depicted on the agenda. We have 1 maternity leave and we have 2 resignations. Could I get a motion to approve that, please?
Ms. Bayless, yes. Mr. Candela? Ms. Angarola? Mr. Becker? Ms. Ham?
Yes.
Yeah, just ask for a second.
Okay, and that motion passes. The next item up for action is the insurance rates for 2024, 2025. Is there anything you want to say on that, Eric? No. Okay, we're good. I don't like denying you the opportunity to speak, so I just thought I would ask. Okay, sorry. Okay. So be it resolved that the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the 2024-2025 healthcare rates as listed in the table below for the plan year beginning July 1st, 2024. May I have a motion to approve, please?
Mr. Condella? Mr. Becker? Ms. Angerola? Ms. Bayless? Yes. Ms. Hale?
Yes. Okay, that motion is also approved. Then the next item for action is approving the resolution to designate interest earnings for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Be it resolved that the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the designation of interest earnings for fiscal year 2023-2024 as recommended. May I have a motion to approve, please?
Mr. Condella? Mr. Becker? Ms. Angerola? Ms. Bayless? Yes. Ms. Hale?
Yes. The next item up for action is approving the consolidated district plan. Peter, did you want to say anything on this? I think your memo explained it, but. Okay. Be it resolved that the Diamond Lake 76 Board of Education accepts and approves the 2023-2024 consolidated district plan as presented. And we have a motion to approve, please.
Second. Mr. Becker? Ms. Bayless? Yes. Ms. Angerola? Yes. Ms. Hale?
Yes.
Mr. Condella?
Okay, that motion is also approved. And then the last item up for action, or not action, review, is the managed service provider proposal. So Mr. Hanson, I don't know if you want to speak to that. Thanks.
So after a long vetting process, as shared prior, I vetted over 4 to 5 MSPs with myself and my technician to see what would be the right fit. The referral process that I sought out was for my technology group of CTOs around the state of Illinois. And I sought out who has been implementing and who they highly recommend and have been utilizing and trust. Mindsight was highly recommended by at least 3 of the people based off responses. And on top of that, I followed the referral process for a few other people on top of what was being provided. They came on site to meet as opposed to anything virtual, which says a lot. But on top of that, they provided a portfolio of what they provide, the flexibility that will provide as a managed service provider. And on top of that, also provided us flexibility, even what they provided for their proposal. So they really wanted, as us trying to seek out the appropriate partner that we could trust, it follows the same way for them as well. It's trying to find a client that will actually be a great partner for them as well. So it was a really good collaboration when it comes to seeking out whom we would trust to move forward as the managed service provider. And that's why I was provided here for board review.
Anyone have any questions?
I just noticed that they had that opt-out clause after 2 years.
I asked for that. So, yeah, so
Good sign.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a great, thank you for mentioning that. So, based off my plan, what I shared is I think having a good understanding of being locked into, and keep in mind too, one of the people that I talked to, a CTO in Bremen District down south, is that he was in the same boat. He has absolutely zero intention in changing pace. He actually really enjoys working with them, which is nice to hear. This was not a referral that was shared by them. I sought it out myself, which is nice to hear as well. And it doesn't lock you into a long-term commitment after 2 years. If and when we need to reassess, we have some flexibility.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll put this on for the June 18th board meeting for you all to approve.
Okay. Okay, that wraps up our business agenda. Moving on to board discussion. So District 103 reached out to us because they want to propose a resolution for the IASB Delegate Assembly, which essentially is giving schools that are not polling places the option to stay open on election day. You can see the resolution is attached in the packet. And so we would just need to be able to tell them if we would like to, essentially sign on and join them to support this. So I thought we could just discuss what, whatever you guys think. Yeah, 103, sorry. So it's Lincolnshire Prairie View.
Are our buildings polling places?
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be different if we had, like a mix. But I think that there's a number of districts where none of those buildings are, like ours, are polling places. Oh,
Well, it looks like only that additional central.
It should not be mandated.
to close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not to necessarily be a polling place, but.
right, this is just giving you the option,
Right, but
essentially.
it says here in the proposed language, if none of the buildings used by students within the district service polling places. So it would be like an all or nothing. Have one, you gotta close, but if you don't have any, then you might have an option.
I mean, it affects us in that we could stay open. Yeah. Like, so that we would, I mean, essentially gives us more flexibility with our own calendar.
And this wouldn't be for next year. It would be for, because they want to bring this up at the delegate in November.
Makes sense.
And it localizes our decision. Like right now, we don't have it. Any flexibility.
Doesn't say anything here, but I assume this would be something that's a lot, if maybe applying, like knocked out in the reasoning, like some other holidays certain schools opt out of.
Mhm.
I would assume that this would just be added with the rationale, we have no schools used as, any district buildings used as polling places as a reason.
Okay, is anyone opposed to supporting it? Okay, then we'll let them know.
Okay.
I think they're just hoping that if they can get, I think they reached out to all the Stevenson theaters, that if they could get a bunch of districts to support it, it would have, a better likelihood of making it onto kind of the resolutions list. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for board discussion. We had one FOIA request. I see the response. I don't think I see the request.
It's this.
Oh, never mind. I see it.
Okay.
Never mind. Sorry, my laptop screen is small. And that was fulfilled. Notices and communications. We just have, see all notices of communications. Great. Thanks for attending that. Okay, then we will move on to public comments and petitions on non-agenda items. And there being no audience, moving on to others. I don't have anything for others. Anyone else? Okay, then we will adjourn to executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, and for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Mr. Becker? Mr. Candela? Ms. Angarola? Ms. Bayless? Yes. Ms. Hale?
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Eric, I have a question about this, resolution. Do you need this in black pen? No, okay. Oh, okay.